Oh, this is so embarrassing. I have 2 copies of One Last Stop in frame at the moment. Listen, okay, Book of the Month, hardcover edition, paperback, and I'm going to give this one as a gift to someone who will see this video later and know that I put their gift on my shelf. We've reached June. We're actually really deep into June. Wow, reading has gotten weird. I'll be honest, I've been reading a lot of books that just make me question what is a book and who am I as a reader. So as usual, I will not be suffering alone and I'll be inflicting this onto you, and hopefully you've read some of these books or will, and we can discuss and question our lives together. If you're new here, my name is Tiernan. I read books like the ones you see here and mostly queer books. It's a good time over here, so if you've got a minute, just like bring your fingers to the subscribe button and we'll carry on. But the first book I want to talk about is one that has absolutely shattered me. This is the most gut-wrenching of the books, and it is The Great Believers by Rebecca Makkai. Ah, my God. I can't even think about it without my heart sinking. Oh my God. I've been wanting to read this for a long time. It's been sitting here in LA, and if you know anything about me, you know that I left LA to quarantine back home with family, and so my copy of this was here. And so it's been on my, like, when I get back to LA TBR forever, so I'm back. I read it finally. It took me a long time to read, like 2 weeks. Sorry if that sounds short to you. It once did for me also, but that's a long time now for me to be reading a book. The short version is that this book is about a group of friends, mostly gay men, in Chicago in 1985 during the AIDS crisis. And so it's about how AIDS impacted Chicago. We hear about San Francisco, we hear about New York quite a bit. There is not a lot of fiction or nonfiction about how the AIDS epidemic hit the Chicago gay community. And so the main character is this young man named Yale. We open up at his friend's memorial. We follow his own relationship, his job working at Northwestern, dealing with art and planned giving. He feels that he is one of the lucky ones because he's been in a monogamous relationship for a long time now, and he and his partner are both HIV negative. And so as they're watching all of their friends die around them, he feels this kind of survivor's guilt. There's another storyline happening in every other chapter that flashes forward to 2015, where the sister of that friend who has died in chapter 1 is traveling to France to find her daughter who has fallen into a cult. And she's also kind of reflecting on how the events of 1985 are still impacting her. It's a lot. It is a heavy book. It is also a very literary, slow burn. And for a long time in the beginning to middle of this book, I was very irritated. I was over reading this book. I almost put it down, but I'm so glad I didn't. What kept me really was the writing. There are several lines in every chapter that I wish I had highlighted or tabbed. I was just doing the audiobook and walking, so I couldn't. But there is some stunning writing in this book, and also the research is very deep. And the Chicago of it all also kept me because I love Chicago stories, and so the writing becomes very atmospheric, and there's just a deep emotional truth that's like cutting through every mundane thing that happens in this book. And by the end, I was like, I've been an idiot this whole time. Like I'm watching these lives happen, and they're so fragile, and oh my God. By the end, I was like, okay, I think I just have to go back to the start and appreciate this more. It's a hugely acclaimed book. It's what New York Times top 10 books of 2018, multi-award winning, National Book Award finalist. This book is out there and doing things. So I have had it and been meaning to read it, but the experience of reading it was just not what I thought it would be. It was a challenge for me, and one that I feel like helped me grow as a reader. Like, I don't know. Thinking back on it, it's like the process of grief, I feel, where you look back on these moments with characters and feel like you didn't understand in the moment what it was, and now you can't tell that person what they meant to you. And that's how I feel about the characters in this book. So heartbreaking. The plot, again, is a little slow but very clever, and My God, I'm just gonna start sobbing if I keep going. The next book I have read recently is The Ivies by Alexa Donne. You might know Alexa Donne from AuthorTube, BookTube. I have fallen in love with her videos in the last year as I have been rewriting my manuscript and querying this year. And so her videos have absolutely been a guiding light for me. I had not read Brightly Burning or her other book, and so this is a YA thriller. It came out in May, and I received an ARC from NetGalley to read it, and I was just like, well, this person who like doesn't even know me but has been my North Star through like the treacherous querying journey that I've been through. I have to read her book, and I'm so glad I did because it was good. Oh my God. The Ivies is about a group of girls at this boarding school, high school. They are called the Ivies, and they're all meant to basically get into one of the Ivy League schools, and they sabotage these other students. And so we open on early decision day, and our main character has secretly applied to Harvard when she wasn't supposed to, because sort of the Regina George of the group was supposed to get into Harvard. The Regina George of the group, Avery, does not get into Harvard, but Olivia does. She has to keep it a secret. She finds out that another Ivy did the same thing and also got into Harvard, and then that Ivy ends up murdered. There's a body, it's a thriller. It's wild. So last year I read One of Us is Lying and One of Us is Next by Karen M. McManus. They were not my cup of tea. Like that kind of book, like the YA murder mystery thriller, not really my thing. I will say that I enjoyed the Ivies more than those books, which are obviously like sustained #1 New York Times bestsellers. There was something about the consistent first person of this book. There was an extra level of honesty in the storytelling because like she's the friend who kind of has less money, and I feel like Alexa Donne, she didn't try to make this character seem pretty in her narration. You get a sense that she's a good person, but she makes so many wrong decisions. She has some questionable lines of thinking. She's bitter, she's resentful, and you really just root for her, and the story is really exciting. Like I would absolutely recommend this to anyone who enjoyed One of Us is Lying. Like, must read. I think the cover is also very clever. There's one device that I'm picking up on in books that have a mystery element or something that's like out there, something that shouldn't be happening in a contemporary world. And I feel like authors use this all the time to kind of explain it off, where they have this line that's like, this isn't like a horror movie or something, you guys. And that is used a few times in this book. And once I saw it, it became a pet peeve, and it has become a pet peeve of mine in so many other books now too. So I'm sorry to the Ivies. It is not this book's fault. I just couldn't unsee it once I knew it was there. But overall, I really enjoyed this book. I am so glad I read it, and I will be reading Alexa Donne's next thriller, which has sold and is coming out, I know, and I'm excited for that. The next book I read recently is The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. Beautiful, beautiful cover, and just kind of the latest commercial adult fiction that has like book club and everyone's talking about it kind of thing. And so I was like, I'm gonna read that. I fell into the trap. I did. And I struggled with this book a lot. I really enjoy the concept, and therefore I enjoy like the first 50 pages or so. This woman decides to die. Her life is going wrong in a lot of ways. Her relationship has failed. She gets laid off from her job. What drives the beginning of this book is like she's deciding to die, and she finds herself in this library in between life and death, where it's full of books that include her regrets and her alternate lives based on different decisions that she could have made. And so she can go into these realities and see what her life would have been like had she made a different decision. The sliding door moments. The book basically becomes her going into all these other lives, chapter after chapter after chapter. I was picturing like in Order of the Phoenix at the end, like with all the prophecies. That's how I saw Midnight Library. She would go into these different alternate lives, and as she's there, she is her old self. She wouldn't necessarily know the background, all the details, like all these new characters who are in this new life of hers. So she would have to catch herself up And in every scenario, there's another character who's like, what's going on, Nora? Why don't you know this person? Why don't you know this detail? Are you okay? Are you feeling okay? And it would just happen over and over again. And I'm like, haven't I seen this done where the character kind of intuitively knows details about their lives so that we don't have to do this scene so many times? And it's just like the same exchange of dialogue every time where she has to ask these questions like, remind me again, what is your son's name and how old is he? It's so unnecessary. And it is sort of the kind of book where you get it about 15 pages in. It's like, okay, there's going to be some kind of twist, something different is going to happen. It does not really, unfortunately. It's kind of a book you can just like sink your teeth into and sit back and enjoy for an afternoon. And that's what I did. It was like one Sunday I read this book. It's so quick. It's very, digestible and a fast read that is solid a lot of times. Like the writing is decent. There's some funny moments, some sweet moments, some like what if love story moments. I will say it really got me thinking. Like it is a book where you kind of close it and sit back and you're like, what would my other realities be? What are my moments? What are my regrets? Like what would be playing out in my midnight library? And I mean, that kind of just naturally happens because it's a book that is just about your life as a whole, big picture. And so it's hard for that not to happen. And so I appreciated that. Left me feeling like all existential on a Sunday. I could definitely see this as like a good family movie night. If there's an adaptation, maybe there will be, we'll see. And the final book that I've recently read is Lincoln in the Bardo by George Saunders. This is a debut novel, but it's one of those like highly anticipated debut novels from an author who's already like written shorter form works and won tons of awards. So this book came out a few years ago. I've been meaning to read it. It's so creative and bizarre and emotional. I cried so many times like at the beginning of this book. And it's written in a very interesting, I don't think you're supposed to call it script form, but it's like that where there are many narrators with different lines that it looks like this. And basically Lincoln in the Bardo, it's about when Willie Lincoln, Abraham Lincoln's son, dies at the age of like 10. We basically find ourselves again in this in-between life and death situation, but we're coming from largely the perspective of these other people who have been in the Bardo, this in-between place, for a very long time because they have not quite learned what they need to. They're going through their own journey and they're witnessing the death of this young boy. And it sort of brings this stillness and this disbelief amongst everyone there. So these fictional characters are now interacting with Willie Lincoln. They see Abraham Lincoln coming to the grave. Oh my God. And then there's this history layered into it too. Whew. This book is intense. It is a lot and it is so good. The emotion in this book, the writing is like so creative. Another kind of like boundary breaking novel. I mean, it's just like not your typical straightforward book. It is so good. So I felt this way and then I started reading reviews like from my friends on Goodreads who are like mostly y'all. So many people didn't vibe with this book really. Like a lot of people had a hard time getting into or getting through this book and I get it. I think just like the other side of the Midnight Library, the way a lot of people are enjoying that while I'm struggling, like I really enjoyed this. And people are like, I don't know, there's different tastes. There's something you have to kind of accept about this book early on. And once you do, I think you can kind of just like go along for the ride. It's just like, you're either in or you're out. And I was completely in, but I so understand how others would struggle. So I don't know, do a Kindle sample or something of this book. I want to read more of his work now. It's also just like funny and I don't know, it's powerful and it's, I liked it so much. Well, those are some books I've been reading. So I'm sitting here in my goddamn LA apartment and I had to turn off my AC so like I can see myself sweating now and this needs to end. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Tiernan. Links to everything will be in the description and I'll see you guys very soon with another video. Have a good one. Goodbye.